Obligatory warning. The following video features content some viewers may find disturbing or upsetting. While I have placed timestamps in the video to skip PSAs with exceptionally triggering content, all PSAs in this video will be shown exactly as they aired, completely uncensored. For this reason, this video should not be viewed by anybody under 16. While they're nowhere near as scary as the PSAs I reviewed in the last video, the European Union's member states have produced some rather scary PSAs. And there's only one rule I've made for this compilation of the top 30 scariest European PSAs, that rule being no UK PSAs, since those warrant a list of their own. That being said, without any further ado, let's get to the video. Be warned, this video starts with tame PSAs, much like my other countdowns, but they quickly become horrifying. This is arguably the most tame PSA on this list, and actually quite funny until you realize just how deadly driving this close to another car can be, which this PSA implies with that car crash sound at the end. I also notice how uncomfortable the people look as the man with the briefcase is closely tailing them, and that's another creepy factor to this PSA.
Nou, we willen graag een test met je doen.
Ja?
Stel het is nacht, er is brand uitgebroken. Door de rook zie je niks, dus je krijgt deze blinddoek om. Je hebt nu 2 minuten om buiten te komen.
Ga gauw. Mijn hoofd.
Dag, we wilden graag een test met u doen.
Ja, nou dat kan.
Stel het is nacht, er is brand uitgebroken.
Ja,
Door de rook ziet u niets, daarom krijgt u een blinddoek om. En u heeft nu 2 minuten om buiten te komen.
mag gewoon. Jeetje. Jeetje, wat erg.
U heeft het gehaald, maar u bent wel uw kind vergeten.
Ja, inderdaad. Ja.
Goedenavond. We wilden graag een test met u doen. Stel het is nacht, er is brand uitgebroken. Ja. Door de rook kun je niks zien, dus je krijgt nu even een blinde kom. Je hebt 2 minuten de tijd om buiten te komen. Wacht even. Goeiedag.
Hallo?
Ik zou graag een test met je willen doen. Stel, het is nacht en je ligt te slapen. Beneden is er brand uitgebroken omdat je een stand-by knopje aan hebt laten staan. En de rook gaat meteen naar boven, maar daar merk je helemaal niets van.
Wat moet ik nu doen?
Niets. Je bent wel gestikt. Je kind ook.
The scary thing about these PSAs is that they really show just how unprepared we can truly be for fires, and they don't even rely on shock factors in order to get their point across. The participants are very calm and some even joke, but they won't be laughing in the event that this actually happens to them.
So you think you can drink and drive? Just a perfect day.
Hey, look, I'm only having the one, and I'm off home.
At a quarter of the legal limit, your confidence is up, and you will start to take more risks.
Okay, the last one.
At a third of the legal limit, your reaction times are already slower.
Sure, it couldn't be tea time already.
At half the legal limit, your judgment is impaired.
I'll be fine. Sure, I'm only down the road.
At the legal limit, you are 6 times more likely to have an accident.
The boy you hit is dead. Dead.
Never drink and drive. It's always too late to say sorry. You're going to reap just what you sow.
I may not be including UK PSAs, but Irish PSAs are fair game. And back in the day, they didn't fuck around with drunk driving PSAs. Here we basically see forensics crews cleaning up a young boy's room and guilt-tripping the viewer into not drinking and driving, destroying any notion that, oh, I've only had a little, it's okay to drink and drive, which it's not ever okay to drink and drive.
The government is cracking down on the illegal possession of firearms. Risk 4 years imprisonment or turn in your weapon from the 1st until the 12th of November at your local police station. The government is cracking down on the illegal possession of firearms. Risk 4 years imprisonment or turn in your weapon from the 1st until the 12th of November at your local police station.
Intuberen, schoten in hoofd en borst, gaat snel achteruit. ABC instabiel. Doe maar snel, doe maar een tweede infuus erbij.
Klaar voor beademing.
The government is cracking down on the illegal possession of firearms. Risk 4 years imprisonment or turn in your weapon from the 1st until the 12th of November at your local police station. The government is cracking down on the illegal possession of firearms. Risk 4 years imprisonment or turn in your weapon from the 1st until the 12th of November at your local police station.
I personally don't agree with the government confiscation of firearms probably because we Americans love our guns so much that our Constitution has a Second Amendment protecting our right to bear arms so long as we are not felons, but I can see why the Dutch government would want these weapons out of the hands of civilians, seeing as how statistics show carrying a gun actually increases the risk of violence since one's anger can be taken out with a deadly weapon like a gun. We see various scenarios like self-defense gone wrong, fear rising in Dutch neighborhoods, and young kids accidentally killing themselves with improperly stored firearms, and it makes you reconsider just how safe guns will truly make you feel at the end of the day. There's a few PSAs from this campaign, but arguably this is the most iconic of them all. Everything about this PSA is iconic, and it's one of the only PSAs in these types of lists in which the protagonist survives relatively unharmed. Wear your safety belts, people. It will save you from meeting God before your time in a case like this. It's one of the most powerful PSAs since it confronts teens with their own mortality. This PSA teaches a tough lesson, but nonetheless a necessary lesson.
It's not what you thought when you first began it. You got what you want. Now you can hardly stand it though. By now you know it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop till you wise up. You're sure there's a cure, and you have finally found it. You think one drink will shrink you to your underground and living down, but it's not going to stop. It's not going.
A próxima vez que conduzir depressa, lembre-se do Elder.
This PSA is hard to watch, even though it's extremely minimalistic. We see that due to his paralysis from the accident, Helder has very little fine motor skills, and thus struggles with a simple task like buttoning his coat. He's trying his hardest, but it still takes him 2 minutes to finish buttoning his coat after it all. The smile only minimally lessens the harshness of this minimal PSA. surprised I've never talked about this PSA before. This is one of the creepiest anti-smoking PSAs I have ever seen, and although it's incredibly simplistic, its ambiance is super morbid throughout as the cigarettes turn into a candle's wick on our smoker's grave, and all we hear are the crows afterwards. Now, obviously, this trope has been done a lot, but none as well as this Polish PSA. Now, this probably made more sense back in 2008 when pinup girls and cars were pretty common on the internet. Basically, this PSA is a parody of a car salon presentation where the two things your typical teenage boy covets, expensive cars and hot girls, are showcased. We then see that with this fast car, these girls have been involved in an accident and have lost limbs and have had half their faces burnt off while speeding. It's one of the most creative and effective PSAs I've ever seen, especially with that line like, "You'll think it's cool up until you see the results." This PSA is one of the tamest Amnesty International PSAs, and yet it's still creepy nonetheless. The radio recordings and gun assembly sounds as this pen is being assembled, as well as the dim room and reverb the sounds have, all all creep me out for some reason. But this call to action is very powerful, saying that your signature is one of the most powerful forms of ammunition. It's rare I show classic PSAs, but there's no way I couldn't mention this one. It's true what they say about 1970s PSAs. They did not hold back, no matter what country they aired in. Here we are treated to some lovely shots of seals being clubbed to death before this pretty lady is revealed to be a bloodthirsty vampire whose greed and vanity is the reason these seals were beaten and skinned for their fur.
Bon anniversaire, nos vœux les plus sincères, que ces quelques fleurs vous apportent le bonheur. Bon anniversaire, nos vœux. Que ces quelques fleurs vous apportent le bonheur.
This PSA is innocent at the beginning, with children singing Bon anniversaire, which is the French version of Happy Birthday. However, it turns dark very quickly after we hear tires screech, and the PSA lulls us into a false sense of security again. But then instead of a crash like we expected, The candles are aggressively blown out before that heavy hitter of a line shows up. 6 years old, forever, implying he died on his birthday. Holy fucking shit, this PSA is a roller coaster of emotions. A double fake out. I very rarely see that in a PSA.
This young boy just suddenly came out of nowhere. I was speeding, I was over the limit. I mean, I wasn't speeding faster than anybody else on the road. I decided to change the channel on the radio, but he didn't signal it. There's not a single day that I don't think about it and wish I could turn back time. Not a care in the world, everything's gonna be alright, 'cause you're the lucky one.
It was such a beautiful day, and it's a situation you just can't predict. Everybody tells me it's not my fault, but I did drive just a little bit too fast. They were just there, but they were so young. I'm so sorry.
You're the lucky one, so I've been told. As free as the wind blowing down the road.
But I can't help feeling. I just wish I could turn back time.
Not a care in the world, not a worry inside. Everything's gonna be alright, 'cause you're the lucky one.
The first one is the saddest to watch, since this man had accidentally killed a young boy and lives with the regret of this each day, wishing he could turn back time because of his speeding mistake. He sounds on the verge of tears, and I feel bad for him. Then the horror of the second PSA lies in the severe survivor's guilt the woman has, feeling as though her mistake caused this young couple to meet their end, which in a sense it did. She truly feels as though her slight speeding caused this whole mess, and this depiction of survival's guilt is what makes this PSA the scarier one. This is where the stuff starts amping up, people. Don't say I didn't warn ya.
Enfants et partage. Pour les milliers d'enfants battus, battons.
See what I mean about how things are just amping up? This is one of the most shocking PSAs I've ever seen out of France, and it's incredibly hard to watch since the violence just comes out of nowhere. We start out watching a family eating breakfast, then the mother slaps the son and the father starts whipping him with a belt. We don't even know what spurred this on, we just watch the son be tortured, and it becomes all the more horrifying when we learn that this is a dramatization. However, that doesn't mean this didn't happen. In reality, the victim is a 6-year-old child, meaning this torture was happening to a little kid. Holy shit, this PSA is brutal. be told, I actually found the girl's vision of herself in the mirror very attractive, but that's the whole point of the PSA. She's a healthy-sized girl by our perspective in the mirror, but in reality, she is definitely underweight. This slightly chubby version of herself she sees in the mirror is just a hallucination. She has nothing to squeeze except her own loose skin. She's being tortured by her own insecurities and society's beauty standards. There's a reason we find her emaciated figure horrifying, and it's because it's not natural. This is someone barely hanging on to life. Alcoholism is a huge problem in a lot of Scandinavian nations, but most particularly Finland, and of course the country that made these three PSAs, Sweden. Granted, this is more common in Sweden's big cities such as Stockholm. However, it is a problem that affects 300,000 Swedes. The Swedish legal drinking age is 18, though to buy it in a store, one has to be 20 years old. Now, what does this have to do with this series of PSAs? Well, like most of Europe, there is a big issue in Sweden of teenagers illegally obtaining alcohol from adults, though oftentimes they just pay an adult to buy booze for them rather than buying it from randos. Now, these PSAs make it very clear that booze is not kid stuff, since it shows kids seriously getting hurt while drunk. They get beat up, start fires, and go through hell. While all of this is shocking, I'd say the creepiest part of these PSAs is the synth music box playing throughout most of the PSAs. It's supposed to sound like an ice cream truck crossed with a music box to remind you that these are kids, but it's also really fucking unsettling.
This is no joke. 2 or 3 dead and hundreds injured every day in a country as small as this is no joke at all. Too many people in the car obscuring the driver's view is one of the most common causes of accidents.
A fun fact about your old pal Antonio. This was one of the first PSAs I'd ever watched in a compilation. I watched it on a school Chromebook in middle school. And initially, I wondered why it was in the compilation, since the beginning is just pure slapstick humor with the ragtime music and stock sound effects, but holy shit, the driver's look of shock was exactly the look I had upon seeing the dead family. I don't know what it was about the Czech Ministry of Transport in the late 2000s, but they absolutely loved scaring the shit out of viewers. This PSA went from annoying to shocking very quickly. The ding of the seatbelt alarm is annoying, but it's there for a reason. It gives you a reason to buckle up and not have this fate of your brains being turned to mush by a hard impact against the windshield or rearview mirror. I also find the abrupt silence after the man smashes his head into the rearview mirror just plain creepy.
Vi menneskers kroppe er ikke bygget til at modstå særlig voldsomme sammenstød. Allerede ved 30 km i timen ses alvorlige skader, svarende til idrætsskader. Selv en lille stigning i hastigheden har alvorlige konsekvenser, og bliver ramt ved 40 svarer til et fald på over 6 meter. Nu taler vi om komplicerede brud, indre blødninger og svære hjerneskader. Med hastighed på 50 km i timen kan jeg desværre ikke stille meget op. Det bliver et job for kollegerne på etagen nedenunder.
I always enjoy PSAs from a medical perspective, but I'd be lying if I said they weren't unnerving, this PSA being no exception, but rather being an example of this. Our neurologist here gives us chilling comparisons when it comes to the damage car crashes can cause, the worst being what happens when you're hit at 50 kilometers per hour or 31 miles per hour for my fellow Americans. Yeah, I know 31 miles per hour may not seem like much considering most cars these days are capable of going at least 110 miles per hour. But if a neurologist cannot help you if you've been hit at that speed, then you bet your balls an impact like that is serious.
Sin cinturón de seguridad, el impacto contra el parabrisas equivale a esto. A pesar del airbag, el impacto contra el volante a esto. La proyección de los pasajeros de atrás contra los de delante a esto. La proyección hacia el parabrisas de un niño a esto. Y la expulsión fuera del vehículo a esto. Abróchate el cinturón. Abróchate a la vida.
This PSA has lived in my head rent-free ever since I saw it in middle school, but you would not believe how long it took me to find it again. And it's still just as hard-hitting, no pun intended, as I remember. All the visual metaphors for the force of a crash without a seatbelt are fucking brutal, especially the first and fourth ones, where a woman has an unnervingly clean fall from a tall height, and a child is rammed into a glass wall. Oh, and of course, the second one, where a man fucking takes a sledgehammer to the head showing even with airbags, a crash with no seatbelt would still do serious damage to you. Holy shit, this PSA was worth all the hunting just for me to talk about it again.
Oudejaarsavond. Wij zijn er klaar voor. Jij ook?
I don't care what anyone says, this is objectively Sears' most scary and brutal PSA they've ever made. It's 30 years old now, and I'd say it'd be just as effective now as it was then. Why? Well, it pulls absolutely no fucking punches in depicting the excruciating pain you will be in for if you fuck around with fireworks. One man had his eyes burned, another had severe burns to the hand and is screaming in sheer agony, and never has medical equipment looked so fucking menacing than in this PSA.
Ça va? Oui, ça va. Clara? Clara? Maman? Clara?
Respectons toujours les limitations de vitesse.
2 car accidents for the price of 1 PSA. Didn't think it was possible, but here it is. We're led on to believe that this family narrowly survived death after flipping the car while speeding, but no, this PSA says fuck that in favor of ramming a speeding van into the flipped car, splattering the father and most likely the family in the process. If this isn't the unluckiest family I've ever seen, I don't know what is. But it'd definitely scare any sane person away from speeding. Arguably one of the most heartbreaking PSAs I've ever seen. It's really sad to see people going through such a terrible thing, and this PSA, much like human trafficking, doesn't have a happy ending. This woman thought she'd be a model, but instead ended up being pimped out, and this version of Satuma, I hope I pronounced that right, is just hauntingly beautiful. It's upsetting to realize that this happens, even in the first world, but like the PSA said, we can't just ignore and expect it to go away. We need to acknowledge that this is happening, and we need to fucking do something about it. Oh, good God! This PSA is some unholy abomination of squick. Ew, 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 ew. Holy fucking shit. It's the sound in the background of this sick fuck getting off to the young kid in the picture that really gives this PSA its squick factor, as well as the incredibly creepy motions the mouse makes. God, the internet is just one of the many things a sick fuck will use to get their sick kicks. Am I right? Of course I'm right. I'm always right. These PSAs don't show anything, but good God, the first and last ones were hard to listen to. Well, they're all hard to listen to, but the first one, we hear a little girl having her innocence stripped away in one of the most horrible ways. Then the second one has audio of children being gunned down in a war. Then the third one has audio of children who starved to death being buried. And the fourth one has a little girl having an excision, otherwise known as type 2 female genital mutilation. It's the subtle sounds that really make these PSAs horrifying, such as the whimpers in the first one and the chopping in the fourth one.
Las palomas las quito las plumas, las lagartijas las cortamos la cabeza y los pájaros los desplumamos a veces también. Las lagartijas las quito la cabeza o la cola o se las echo a la gente. Y con los ratones les meto un palo por el culo. Les corto la cola, les saco los ojos, les rajo y les quemo por dentro, las tripas. Hay algunos que me los como y hay otros que tira a bocajarro con ellos, con mi pistola, las bolas. Pues según, si son siameses, pues les corto y les quemo las tripas, se las saco, se las doy a los ratones. Porque me gusta. Porque me gusta y me divierto. Porque me divierte.
The things these boys describe are absolutely fucking horrific. This is how serial killers start out, torturing animals and laughing about it. I sincerely hope these kids got mental help and realized how wrong their actions were, but considering how they were describing how they killed animals, such as plucking birds, decapitating lizards, and so forth, I'm not counting on it. I bet if I were around them in that time, I would have probably been sheared and turned into mutton while I was still alive. And if the descriptions weren't nauseating enough, we are also treated to some nice shots of animal corpses in this PSA where we are showcasing 2 future serial killers.
Break the silence. Speak out for children.
Everything about this PSA is fucking terrifying. From the basement itself to the sounds of a nonce getting off and tearing a little girl's panties in this attempt, as well as the creepy dolls, this entire PSA could be a horror movie with how it's shot. I've seen horror movies less horrifying than this PSA. It's one of the most unnerving things I've ever seen as a PSA reviewer. This is arguably the most horrifying anti-child exploitation PSA. While Basement was unnerving, this PSA turns the shock factor up to 11, no fuck that, up to 30. It's not even all that explicit in what it shows, due to legality and ethics, thank God. But it doesn't need to be. The masks are creepy, yes, but what's even more shocking is what is being shown. Basically, a depiction of the economy of child exploitation material, showing that anyone sick enough to view this shit is providing sicker people a reason to make and sell it.
Bon, vous faites quoi là? On est sur le parking et on commence à se faire chier donc... T'es con!
Moi qui conduis.
Allez, rends-moi ça, c'est ma caisse.
Mais non, t'es bourré.
Moi je vais avec eux, moi.
Non, mais attends, j'aurais pas fini avec toi, allez vite.
Dommage.
Tu conduiras après.
Et on se retrouve là-bas, on s'attend sur le parking.
Toujours rien.
Bonjour madame, vous êtes bien la mère de Frédéric Rollin-Jacquet? Voilà madame, votre fils a eu un accident de la circulation à 3h30 sur la départementale 22.
Et?
Il a perdu la vie madame. Ça va vous demander beaucoup de courage, madame, mais je vais vous demander de venir nous accompagner pour reconnaître votre fils.
Qu'est-ce qu'il fout?
C'est pas bon ça. J'aime pas ça.
Monsieur, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Serrez-moi la main. Vous étiez combien dans le véhicule? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Message du véhicule de premier secours numéro 4. Accident de la circulation confirmé. 2 véhicules de tourisme en collision à force cinétique. Nous demandons ambulance de réanimation du SAMU ainsi que moyen de désinterfération.
Une personne inconsciente. Une personne.
Le bébé, tu le mets dans l'ambulance.
2 personnes légères avec un enfant qu'on a fait sortir.
D'accord.
Voilà. Véhicule fortement endommagé. Je pense qu'il va falloir un moyen de désincarcération à ce niveau-là. J'ai une personne a priori Delta Charlie Delta.
Madame, j'ai trouvé ça calmement.
On a une personne à état de mort apparente qui est sur le sol avec perte de substance crânienne importante.
J'ai un hémocu à 10. On va 3 kilos. Un fémur ouvert.
Allez, décroche. Décroche. Allô? Julien? C'est un garçon qui a plein de dessins sur les bras.
Allez, on le sort, là, on y va. Il faut le sortir, il est en arrêt, là.
This PSA's name directly translates to Unbearable in French, and that's a very fitting name for it. It goes on for a good 5 minutes. It's really more of a short film than a PSA, but goodness is it brutal. Obviously to be expected, considering this organization literally showed 2 car accidents for the price of 1 before, as we saw earlier in this compilation, but this one takes that energy up to 11. No amount of horror is spared, and nobody in this PSA is spared from the horror. The ones dead, splattered all over the ground, are probably the luckiest ones, and it's a sobering, no pun intended, reminder of why you shouldn't drive drunk.
Open the door, children dear. Your mother is here and has bought something for each one of you. But the little kids take from the rough voice but in the wolf. We will not open the door, they cried out. You are not our
Le récit de l'action, voici le fait de la compréhension de
And I was lucky my uncle didn't say anything.
These mountain killings in those areas will get some snow. Everyone else in the world.
I never thought a phallic serpent could be so unsettling, and if you told me a PSA involving a penis snake would be one of the most horrifying PSAs I have ever seen before I saw this PSA, I would have laughed you the fuck away. And because I was in 6th grade and was an immature fuck, I would have made an "I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going" joke. But this fucking thing is so fucking unsettling, as is the almost total silence in this PSA, which just makes the skin crawling sound the tentacle makes even more uncomfortable. Also, I can't be the only one who thought the big bad wolf was a clever allegory for the pedo that inflicted the trauma that stayed with this girl until death. It's absolutely an effective PSA, and it's proof that a PSA doesn't need to be absolutely shocking to be effective or even scary. This PSA may be the most horrifying European PSA of all time, but that doesn't mean it's good, since it doesn't give a clear way to combat the problem, nor does it give a call to action. All we see after the kid gets blown up is explaining what the fuck just happened. But again, I'd be lying if I said this PSA isn't the scariest European PSA, excluding any from the UK, as per my rule. Obviously, it's a student-made PSA, however, not many people know this, so obviously I'm not expecting God-tier content. As the PIF wiki stated, this is arguably the most graphic child death in a PSA, with the girl being blown to smithereens by an anti-personnel mine, and the audio being either really quiet or really loud, no in between, really adds to the horror factor of said PSA. So without a doubt, Red Banana takes the cake for the scariest European PSA. Doesn't mean it's good though. Well, ladies, gentlemen, and fellow non-binary daisies, we've reached the end of another video. An hour of PSAs and commentary, and it was very much worth it for all the work I've put into this countdown. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you've done all these things, join my Discord server. There is only 1 day left of the fan art contest, and I still only have 2 submissions. Okay, no. Fuck, I forgot someone already did submit a third. I have 3, but it would still be nice if I had more. Submissions will be closed on Sunday, October 1st at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I will have chosen the winners if there are any more submissions by then. If you've done all these things, y'all have a great day. Antonio out. Peace, and, well, either go the fuck to sleep or go outside after watching this video, because I've spent too long on it.